What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Figures of Sport podcast. You're here with your host, Brandon, and today is going to be our second upload of the week, but it's only right. This could be the last game of the NBA Finals, so wanted to make sure that we have some great content for you guys ahead of tonight's Game 6 over in Indiana. So let's uh, jump into that. We're also going to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals, how things ended for the Edmonton Oilers, and keep going with a little bit of MLB news. I know we touched on some things last episode, but we're gonna dive in a little bit deeper on some things this past through this past week so far. And so let's get started. First things first, Game 6 of the NBA Finals tonight in Indiana, and the Pacers' last game's performance, it was a belt to ass situation. The Pacers did not look good at all throughout that game. Turnovers have killed them again. Fouls have killed them again. And it honestly has become a point where, this team is essentially giving games away with the way they're turning the ball over, careless turnovers. Um, Obviously, the big storyline from Game 5 was Tyrese Halliburton's injury, right calf strain. Scored 4 points, 0 for 6 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3. Just not aggressive. He after he tweaked that right calf, he was not able to be himself. He distributed the ball a little bit, but again, he wasn't doing the things that we've normally seen him do throughout the playoffs, throughout the season, and his availability for tonight's Game 6 is in question. I know I did see that, Rick Carlisle, the Pacers head coach, said that they might, uh, they are preparing to be without him. So it's going to be interesting to see. Right now, he's a game time decision for tonight's game, but we're going to have to wait and see closer to tip off if Tyrese Halliburton is going to play tonight or not. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the first thing that I do want to talk about as far as Game 5 was Jalen Williams. Obviously, 40 points. That's a career high for him. You know, he's averaging almost 26 points a game through the finals, and I know I've seen some questions about whether or not he could potentially give Shea a run for his money at Finals MVP. I don't think so. I believe Shea is averaging 32 points a game in the finals, so it's going to be tough for him to kind of steal that away from Shea. But I could see it if Shea has a poor performance today and they are able to win this series on the back of Jalen Williams, or if the Pacers are able to win today, but things are difficult for Shea in Game 6, and then in Game 7, the Thunder are able to pull it out with, again, on the back of Jalen Williams. But again, it's going to be very difficult for him to kind of steal that away from SGA. Would put a perfect cap to the season if they were to win the championship and for SGA to win Finals MVP. But Jalen Williams has been excellent throughout this final series. I believe his scoring per game has gone up significantly. I believe it was 19 and then 20 and then 26, 27, and now 40. So he's been absolutely incredible to watch this series. Um, he has been the perfect co-star to SGA's star on that OKC Thunder team. It's been great to watch. And honestly, as I've said, SGA, he had 31 points, 10 assists in game 5. Um, just consistency. Consistency has been his game all season long. And we have seen him do what he does throughout this NBA Finals. He's had I believe he had one game under 30 points or under 25 points, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but again, the big story through, game 5 now is going to be Tyrese Halliburton. Can he play in tonight's game 6? And if he does play, is he going to be effective? I think that is going to be the biggest part. The biggest thing for this Pacers team is if he can play, and if he can play effectively. I think that personally, if Tyrese Halliburton is going to play, um, if he is anything like he was in game 5, he might be more detrimental to the team than he is helpful. So it's going to be interesting to see what the game plan is, if he plays, if he's healthy enough to play, and if he doesn't play. I think a guy like TJ McConnell obviously gave them a huge spark in game 5, 13 points in that third quarter, kind of helped them kind of close that gap. I don't know if I necessarily see TJ McConnell being the starter, though. I think what would happen more likely than not is that TJ McConnell remains on the bench. You move a guy like Andrew Nemhard to the 1 and maybe bring a guy like either Benedict Mathurin or Obi Toppin off the bench into the starting lineup if Halliburton is unable to go. But again, this game is going to be in Indiana. So regardless of, who plays or doesn't, it's not an easy environment to win in, right, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we saw that in game 4, they kind of gave that game away. And in game 3, they played a great game. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're 15-5 in their last 20 games at home. That crowd is incredible over in Indiana. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond. As I said earlier, very much of a belt to ass situation for the Pacers in game 5. And if we kind of look at some of the deeper numbers, uh let's take a look. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a run. Indiana cut that lead to 2 points in the fourth quarter. Eight and a half minutes left. It was 95-93. Then all of a sudden, you just allow an 18-4 run over the next 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 25 seconds, which essentially sealed the game. It went from a 95-93 game to a 110-97 game, and we know that no lead is truly safe against those Indiana Pacers. We've seen them come back with 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes before. But, when your floor general and Tyrese Halliburton is hurt, he's not able to kind of give the team what they need, that burst of energy. Him not being fully healthy obviously plays a part in that. Him performing, at a lower level than what we're expected of seeing from him in game 5 definitely played a part in that. And, Rick Carlisle ended up pulling the starters with about a minute and 45, a minute and 50 seconds left, and they were down about 13, 15, around that area. And you could just see that they threw in the white towel only because they knew that this wasn't a game that they were going to be able to win with Tyrese Halliburton playing the way he was, and being as injured as he was. So again, a big story for today's game 6 is going to be if he can play, and if he is going to play, how effective will he be? So obviously, if we take a look into some of the other X factors of the game, TJ McConnell, as I mentioned, 13 points in that third quarter, great spark off the bench. Can he do that again for this team? Obviously, they're going to be at home in Indiana. The crowd is going to be live. The energy is going to be booming, and it's going to be interesting to see, what Rick Carlisle does. Again, as I've mentioned, how they respond at home and what the rotations are going to look like without a healthy Halliburton is going to be a huge thing for me, as I watch this game. Now, when you look at things on the other side, the Thunder played incredible in game 5. There was no other way around saying that. They forced 23 turnovers, had 12 blocks in game 5. The elite defense that has been talked about all season long has, truly stifled Indiana in game 5. And it was, you know, contributions from guys like Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace. I believe Cason Wallace hadn't hit a 3-point field goal all final series long and hit multiple in game 5, so let's also look. So I believe, what was it? Let's see. The Thunder bench had 27 points, led by Aaron Wiggins with 14. Cason Wallace had 11. The Pacers bench had 43 points. TJ McConnell had 18. Obi Toppin had 12. A lot of the heavy lifting was from those two. And, again, the turnover battle has been something that I've mentioned uh, in the last episode. The Pacers with 23 turnovers, uh, which was equivalent to 32 Thunder points. The Thunder 11 turnovers, just for 13 points for the Pacers, and paint production. The Thunder outscored Indiana 52-44 in the paint, and Chet Holmgren had a poor game, honestly, offensively. Had a great rebounding game, but again, a poor offensive game, shooting 4 of 15. That's not going to cut it. But when you have contributions from a guy like Jalen Williams going for 40, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going for 31, having 71 points between those two guys, that's more than likely going to be more than enough for the Thunder to pull out a game. Now, again, the rebounding leaders, Chet Holmgren, 11 rebounds, poor offensive game, but again, making his presence known on the glass. Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, both had 6 rebounds for Indiana, which I believe led the team. And, efficiency-wise, Lou Dort was 3 of 6 from 3. Aaron Nesmith was 4 of 5 from 3 for the Pacers. But again, you need a higher number of contributions from the guys on Indiana's team. As I've mentioned before, Ben Mathurin, he's an X factor in this series for me, right? We understand TJ McConnell comes in, pushes the pace, has energy, brings life to that second unit, but Ben Mathurin, being the scorer that he is capable of being, he cannot continue to have dud games if the Pacers want to win this series. And I think for me, you see that he'll have a good game, and then he'll have a couple stinkers back to back. You can't really have that. Listen, Benedict Mathurin can probably go to another team and be a great scoring option, but on this Indiana team, as he's asked to come off the bench, you need him to be a spark. Sometimes he is not doing that. Again, he has the occasional games where he will score 20 points. He has the occasional games where he'll score 4 points, and I think it's going to be very crucial to see, again, what Rick Carlisle does in today's game 6, whether or not Tyrese Halliburton plays. Is Mathurin going to be starting? Is he going to be more of that number 2 option if Halliburton is out? Kind of him and Siakam kind of leading the way for the Pacers, or if he's going to remain on the bench and try to be that big scoring option off the bench with that unit, depending on if, like I said, Halliburton plays and who's inserted into the starting lineup if he doesn't. Now, as we continue to look at some of the other stats, Game 5, I believe Oklahoma City made, or was it Game 4 or Game 5? I think it was Game 4, my apologies, where they made 3 3-point field goals. That was not going to happen again, right? This game, 14 of 32 from 3. The Pacers were 11 of 30. And, Game 4, again, in my thoughts, was the game that Indiana needed to win. You go up 3-1, have a commanding lead in that series. Then you have, even if you lost Game 5 in Oklahoma City, you have 2 chances to win 1 game. Now you have 1 chance to win 1 game, right? And force a Game 7. And it's gonna be tough. This Oklahoma City Thunder team has an amazing defense. They've played exceptionally all playoffs long. And if Indiana is shorthanded, I do believe that they can win without Tyrese Halliburton. That's the thing. I really do, especially being that they're at home. If this was a Game 6 in Oklahoma City without Tyrese Halliburton as a closeout game, I do think that it would be a different story. But being at home, in front of your home crowd, the energy, the passion, the fight, all of that's going to be there for the Pacers. So I do think if I had to pick right now, I'm going to pick the Pacers for Game 6. But again, don't quote me on that. I could definitely see Oklahoma City's defense kind of come in and impose their will on some guys that maybe, if Halliburton doesn't play, are going to be put into spots where they're uncomfortable. A guy who's the number 3 option or a number 4 option may move up to a number 2 or a number 3 now, taking more shots, having the ball in their hands more. It's going to be a different looking game, I believe, if we don't have Tyrese Halliburton available. Now, again, as I mentioned, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 31 points, 10 assists, 13 of 14 from the free throw line. Again, I think in game 4, that first half, he was limited to maybe 2 free throw attempts in the first half, and ended the game with 10. This game was very different. Obviously, 14 attempts from the line, 13 makes. So the Thunder are capitalizing at the free throw line. The problem with the Pacers, outside of turnovers, is fouling. You're getting guys like Jalen Williams to the free throw line, getting guys like Shai to the free throw line, where they are going to make those free throw attempts. Those are guys that you can't put on the line. So when you see that the consistent issues are a consistent problem day in and day out of this series, something has to change. And it's going to be, again, how they kind of game plan without Tyrese Halliburton, or a fully healthy Tyrese Halliburton for game 6 is going to be the biggest thing that I'm looking out for in tonight's game. Now, as we, look, it's going to be hard to overstate what Halliburton means for this Indiana Pacers team, right? And when he's off, the offensive statistics for this team drop drastically. Pascal Siakam has been solid. I believe he had 28 points. Let's see. Let's confirm. Yes, 28 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 8 of 14 shooting, very efficient. He's a guy that if you were to insert Obi Toppin into that starting lineup, maybe at the 4, move Pascal to the 3, have him kind of really push the pace. He's a guy that can get guys open looks. He can create for himself, a little bit for others as well. It's going to be a all hands on deck game. Obviously, Pascal Siakam has to continue doing what he's done. Game 6 is going to be, you're going to need even more from him, right? Whether or not Halliburton plays, because you cannot allow poor play from one player to dictate anyone else's play, right? I think this has got to be a game where if Halliburton does play and he looks very reminiscent of what he did in game 5, you have to get him off the court. Defensively, if he's not able to move, if he's not able to push the pace offensively like what he does best, it's going to be an extremely uphill battle for this Pacers team to prevail. Now, again, as we look, Coach Dagnall, he's been, the last couple of games, he's been doing everything right. I think defensive pressure, smart rotations, late game calls, he's excelled. We've seen him over the last couple of games with his back against the wall, down 2-1 in that series, play exceptionally well, right? Obviously, they forced a game, a late game comeback in game 4. Now, game 5, they were very dominant. Rick Carlisle, obviously, things got to change, right? Things have to change 100% in this next game. If not, they're staying at home, right? They won't be flying back to Oklahoma City for a game 7. And I think we are going to see some difference makers from this Pacers team. Someone's going to step up in a big way. Now, I can't say who. Do I expect it from a Ben Mathurin, and Obi Toppin, and TJ McConnell? I'm not sure. This Pacers team is built on having some of their role players be put in spots where they can excel, right? And I think that, like I said, we're going to see a big performance from one of the Pacers players outside of Pascal Siakam. And I can't tell you who. It's very unpredictable, but I do think that bench, the rest of that starting lineup, with or without Tyrese Halliburton, will perform at a high level today, being that it's a do or die game, win or go home. And it's going to be exciting. I'm very excited for this game 6. But, for me personally, as I kind of sit back and I think about what I watched in game 5, the Pacers just didn't look good. The Thunder are forcing them to play their brand of basketball, right? And I think what we saw was the Pacers throughout this playoff series, they haven't faced elimination once. This is going to be the first time in this playoff run that they faced elimination, down 3-2, but they're at home again, right? Big thing for me. I think they can prevail at home. But, with this Pacers team, I think we've seen them kind of play their own style of basketball, right? With the Knicks, you kind of force them to play a little bit faster, while the Knicks usually play a slower tempo basketball game. With the Bucks, they rushed the pace, they got open looks, they shot the ball well. They did things their way. The last two games for the Thunder, especially late in that game four, as they kind of gave away that lead, they honestly just looked very sloppy, turnovers. As I've said, turnovers have been a big thing, but on top of that, they are not playing how we are accustomed to see them playing. They feel very rushed. They feel that, they aren't comfortable, whether it's late game or just throughout the game in general, forcing passes, not making the right reads at times, fouling when they don't need to be fouling, silly fouls. Quite often, it's going to be, for me, as I sit back and watch those other games, it's interesting to see that this Thunder team can really do that. This Thunder team obviously has had such high praise all season long, for the great defense that they've put on, the individual performances from players, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and obviously a guy like Caruso. He's been huge for them in this playoff run, as of late. You know, performing at a high level in this series specifically. So I think, again, for me, as I watch this as a fan and both kind of watching it from like an analytical standpoint, the Pacers need to get back to playing their brand of basketball. There's no need for them to feel rushed. Yes, I understand this Thunder team has an excellent defense. They're young, they're scrappy, they're guys that are going to contribute, but this Pacers team is not playing how they usually play. Very uncomfortable. I think in Game 6 at home, they need to get back to the basics, get back to being who they truly are for them to be successful in this game. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think? Who wins today? Again, if I have to pick, if you're bending my arm, I'm going to go out on a limb and say Pacers tonight, force a Game 7 in Oklahoma City, but book it. Pacers tonight. Could be wrong, but I'm feeling confident in my pick today, right? So we'll move on, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about tonight. Who wins? What did you guys see from Game 5 that kind of maybe leans you one way or another? Will Halliburton play? Will he not? We'll find out later. So make sure you guys check out Game 6 of the NBA Finals tonight. And again, I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Who wins? Does Oklahoma City close things out tonight? Do the Pacers force a Game 7? Who wins Finals MVP? What does Jalen Williams have to do to steal a Finals MVP performance or award from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? But I also want to see your guys' thoughts. Who is going to be the star for tonight for the Pacers outside of Pascal Siakam? Let me know. Now we'll move forward. I do want to talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. We talked about it a little bit in the last episode, obviously prior to Game 6. But if you missed it, the Florida Panthers have now won their second consecutive Stanley Cup Finals. They were up 2-0 after that first period and never looked back. They won that game 5-1. And it was definitely something that their defense was able to keep the Oilers stars in check. Obviously, Edmonton was outscored 13-4 in first periods across this entire series. When you're down early from the jump, it's a lot harder to make a comeback. And the Oilers were kind of, a team that was very resilient and could make those late game comebacks. But against this Florida Panthers team, it was too much. Um, Florida's forecheck and neutral zone traps kind of stifled Edmonton's transition game. The Panthers scored first in 5 of the 6 games, which set the tone early. As I said, going up 2-0 after that first period alone. And then we also look at some of the other things here. They dominated Game 6. Sam Reinhart had 4 goals, tying an NHL record for most goals in a Stanley Cup Finals game. Only the 6th player in NHL history to do so in a Cup final. The goalie for the Florida Panthers made 28 saves, which anchored their defense. He had a 2.26 goals, a GAA, and a .912 save percentage throughout that playoff run. So this Stanley Cup final, it was not just predicated on the Panthers offense. It was very much, they had a very balanced team, offensively, defensively, very physical, and they were able to kind of impose their will on the Oilers in that Game 6. Now Connor McDavid and Leon were held to a combined 1 point in Game 6. They're 2 stars for that Oilers team. That's not going to cut it. Again, 1 point, they scored 1 goal. So honestly, it was the Panthers defense that allowed them to close this series out. Being very physical on the Stars, not allowing them to have the success they're usually accustomed to. But hats off to this Florida Panthers team. Back-to-back champions for the first time since 2009. And, the Conn Smythe winner was Sam Bennett. He led the playoffs with 15 goals, 5 in the Stanley Cup Finals. He scored in 6 straight road games, and he's only the 5th player in NHL history to do so. Now, again, McDavid was held pointless in Game 6. 1 goal, 4 assists, which is well below his usual postseason pace. And, Leon, who's been clutch all playoffs long, he failed to register a point in the final game, was visibly frustrated. And, the tight checking, the physical play, all of those things played a huge part as far as why Edmonton's Stars could not perform at a high level. Again, the Panthers were built to be a very well balanced team. They outscored, again, as I mentioned, 13-4 in first periods across the series. They trailed almost every single game early on. They trailed by multiple goals after the first period in each of the final 4 games, which, when that happens, it makes it nearly impossible to put that kind of pressure on yourself and on the team to make a comeback win. It's the Stanley Cup Finals. Hockey players are built different. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I believe it was Matthew Tkachuk. He had a groin injury and a hernia. Or no, I apologize. It was an adductor tear and a hernia on the same side. Played through it. You know, guys like that are built different. So when you have guys that are going out in pain and grinding like that, being physical, playing hard, it's going to be very tough to beat those kind of guys. They're hungry. They want to win a championship. And, again, as someone who can enjoy watching hockey, watching this Panthers team, I wouldn't be surprised if they went for a three-peat. The way that team is built, it's very, very much going to be interesting to see what happens next season. And I apologize, I'm going to correct myself now. I said that this is the last time that a team has repeated since 2009. That's incorrect. The last time a team repeated was a couple of years ago with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I wanted to correct myself there. But again, post-game, Connor McDavid admitted that they kept trying the same thing over and over again, but it wasn't working. So again, this Florida Panthers team is physical. They're tough mentally. They're tough physically, and they are going to make you grind day in and day out. But I don't think that this is the end of the road for this Edmonton Oilers team. I do think that they are a great team, and we can see them back in this setting again, whether it's next season or the season after. I think Connor McDavid is too great of a player to end his career without a Stanley Cup final. So I think that they are going to make some changes to help them push past the finish line in the coming season. So it's going to be exciting to see, but again, was a great series for both teams. Hats off to the Florida Panthers. Hats off to the Edmonton Oilers. Um, again, I think that this Florida Panthers team is built to win again in the very near future. But again, don't sleep on this Edmonton Oilers team. Very exciting. Uh, I love this time of year because baseball's in full swing. You know, hockey, we've got the Stanley Cup Finals, the NBA Finals going on at the same time. Uh, it's a great time for sports. So I'm glad that you guys are all here following and paying attention to what we're saying here because we're doing this for you. So now let's move on, and we're going to talk about the MLB. Obviously, I know in the last episode we talked about Shohei Ohtani making his return against the Padres, back to the mound for the first time in almost 2 years. And, you know, he returned to the mound. He was only projected to be the opener, but I didn't expect him to only pitch one inning. You know, in his first inning back, he touched triple digits though, so that was great to see. Had some speed, and he was able to hit some spots. Again, he only pitched for one inning, gave up 2 hits, 1 earned run, and I think that with that with Ohtani coming back, being in the rotation, obviously they're going to limit him to probably being a guy who only opens games for the time being as he continues to build up strength. I don't know if we'll see him going 5 or 6 innings into a game for a while, if at all, this season. I think we may see him become a full-time starter more next season. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy who opens games every 6 days or so, 3 innings max, probably for the rest of this season. Um, but or he could also, similar to how he was used in that World Baseball Classic a couple of years ago, occasionally come in as a closer, pitch an inning or two. Then so it was nice to see Ohtani return to the mound. He also hit his 250th career home run this past week. So it's great to see Ohtani back on both sides of the ball. And on top of that, it was against the Padres, an amazing rivalry. I believe in Wednesday's game, uh, Tuesday's game. Sorry, Tatis got hit, Ohtani got hit. Uh, the rivalry is there. Excellent rivalry. As they've said last postseason, when the Dodgers played the Yankees, prior to that, they faced the Padres in that NLCS series. That was their World Series. That was their World Series. That rivalry was there, and seeing the Dodgers and the Padres face off so many times a year, it's always a great time. And I was very excited to see Ohtani return in that setting. Made things that much sweeter. So we also talked about the Rafael Devers trade, and you know since then, the Red Sox have been continuing to roll. They've gone 9-2 since June 7th. They've won 4 straight series. Uh, Garrett Crochet for the Red Sox continues to shine. 6 innings pitched versus Seattle, 8 strikeouts. He leads the MLB in innings and strikeouts. A guy who was traded this past offseason to the Red Sox from the White Sox in a package that included Braden Montgomery, Chase Meadroth, and Kyle Teal. Now, the Red Sox have also gotten some great contributions from Trevor Story. He had a rough May, but he's bounced back extremely well in June. him and Marcelo Meyer both homered in a pivotal win. And again, as I mentioned before, the Red Sox are moving towards their youth movement after they've called up Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony in the past couple of weeks. So it's gonna be exciting. Some comments came out after the trade from the Red Sox general manager saying that he believes they're in a position to win more games after this Rafael Devers trade. Now, I'm not sure if moving one of the best bats in baseball for some middle of the pack arms is going to do so. But again, with the youth movement for the Red Sox, with some of those veterans that they have kind of thrown in there, I can see I can see it, but I'm not too sure if that is that true or not. So me personally, as a baseball fan, I think sometimes trades are made, and when you put your hat for give up your star player for prospects, you never know how they turn out, right? So obviously they've got a couple high level prospects um, in return for that Devers trade. Again, a guy like Kyle Harrison, he was a top pitching prospect some years ago, hasn't performed to those expectations as of yet. Jordan Hicks, a hard throwing right hander, and then obviously, like I said, some other prospects, hitting prospects. Um, I don't know what is going to happen with the Red Sox. But I know as of right now, the way things are shaking out, the Yankees are at the top, the Rays are right there, and the Blue Jays are ahead of the Red Sox. So it's it's an uphill battle. While the Red Sox are over 500, it is going to be a bit of an uphill battle because if we take a look, um, at just the standings right now, we are able to see that right now, the Red Sox are fourth in their division, 4.5 out from, that top spot. But in the wild card, they're fourth as well. So they're still behind the Blue Jays and the Rays for a wild card spot. And again, it's only June. It's very early in the season, but it's there's a lot of baseball to be played, but with this Red Sox team, the way they're kind of moving forward, obviously they've had a lot of injuries to their pitchers or poor performances. So getting guys like a Kyle Harrison, a Jordan Hicks into that rotation will not only help them eat innings while some of their other guys are able to get healthy or kind of regain um, performance. The Red Sox are going to continue to battle. So on the other side of that trade, the Giants, they have Matt Chapman, who is on the IL right now, but the Giants have been one of the bigger surprises this season. Honestly, they're 41-33 right now. They're 4.5 games back out of first place, and they've performed exceptionally well. Rafael Devers has been a guy for them who is going to he came out and said, honestly, straight up, that he is willing to play wherever, and he's excited to be a Giant. So, when you see that, it's going to be, for me, it's something that obviously we didn't see that same kind of mentality with the Red Sox. He was very standoffish against moving from third base and being the DH, but he seems more open to that role here in San Francisco. Had a good performance in his debut, and again, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out throughout the rest of the season. But the Giants were clearly going all in for a big bat that can help them. And again, very, very excited to see how the rest of this baseball season turns out. There's been a lot of great stories, a lot of teams that have been surprising, honestly, since we're taking a look at things. Again, the Tampa Bay Rays have performed. They're over 500. The Blue Jays over 500 after some of their early season struggles. The apologize. The Orioles have been better as of late offensively, but again, they're still 11 games under 500. A severe drop off from where they've been the last two seasons, winning 90 plus games the last couple years to being under 500 with the same roster essentially. Just very shocking to see this Orioles team kind of fall apart the way they have. Obviously, for them, pitching has been a huge issue over the last couple of seasons, and this year is no different. Obviously, they lost Corbin Burns. Grayson Rodriguez has been out with injuries, and they haven't gotten some of the contributions that they, thought they would from other pitchers that have kind of filled those roles. So, obviously, the Detroit Tigers are probably the best team in the American League. Tariq Skubal has done amazing things on the mound this season to a sub-2 ERA, and he has been excellent. He's on pace for another Cy Young award this season. It's been great to see some of these teams that, people haven't expected to perform at such a high level. So Houston Astros over in the AL West, continuing to do what they do, running that division. They're leading. They have a 5.5 game lead over the Mariners for the number one spot right now. The Mets, the Phillies, both competing for that number one spot in the NL East. If I'm not mistaken, they are currently playing each other right now. Um, and it is uh, it's always exciting, to see some of those interdivision rivalries taking place. So I love to see that. Ronald Acuna has been excellent since he's returned from injury, but the Braves are third in that division, and they are 11 games out of that number one spot. They're still under 500. But this is a team that can definitely bounce back. They're very resilient. They have a great roster. Still have guys like Austin Riley. You know, they have Matt Olson. They have a Ronald Acuna. They are going to be getting back Jurickson Profar in the coming weeks as he returns from suspension in early July. So seeing how this team is currently built, they could look a little bit different in the coming weeks with the trade deadline looming. Um, and their GM came out and said that there's rumors about Chris Sale getting traded. I don't think that's going to happen. He straight up said himself that that's not going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what direction the Braves go. Obviously, their GM is a guy who will not go back on his word. So we're going to see if they're in a position to strike when the trade deadline gets a little bit closer. Maybe they'll trade for some pieces to compete and go out and try to get that wild card spot or even fight for the division. But it is going to be an uphill battle for that Braves team. The Cubs have played exceptionally well this season. They are 45-28 right now. Pete Crow Armstrong has been incredible this season. The addition of Kyle Tucker has been excellent. Seiya Suzuki has performed exceptionally well. I believe he's number 2 in all of MLB with 61 RBIs this season so far. And again, it's just been incredible to watch that team. And I am a White Sox fan. So watching that team for me, it's hurt a little bit. It really has. Uh, but for me as just a baseball purist, a baseball fan, I love seeing good baseball all around. And the Cubs have played an exceptional brand of baseball this season. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline as that gets closer and closer. They could always use you could always use more pitchers, and their offensive contributions from guys like Tucker, Suzuki, PCA, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson. Um, you know they've been excellent. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Brewers can catch up to them this season and make things a little bit tougher on the Cubs as they chase a division title this year. And of course, you got the Dodgers over in first place in the NL West, and they're doing what they do. So, other news speaking of the Dodgers, their owner has now purchased the Los Angeles Lakers for a $10 billion purchase. Now, Lakers fans, you guys got a lot of money to play with now. So I would expect some things to change. So be excited, Lakers fans. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. And again, make sure you guys check out Game 6 of the NBA Finals tonight. I believe they start at 7:30 over in Indiana tonight. And I want to hear your guys' comments. Let me know what you guys think. Who's going to perform well for the Pacers, for the Thunder? Do the Thunder close it out tonight? Do the Pacers steal today and force a Game 7? Very excited to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't already and turn notifications on. We are going to be posting, again, at least one weekly episode. And we're going to, whenever things like this are coming up, we're definitely going to post a second episode because we want to keep you guys informed, up to date, and make sure that we are giving you guys the best content we can. So, again, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.